All right, welcome to the show. This is exciting. There is a movie coming out called Race Walkers. It did awesome in Slamdance. I'm very excited to have, I think, most of the cast and filmmakers on the podcast today. We've got directors and writers Kevin Claydon and Phil Moniz. I've got writer Evan and producer Evan Landry. Thanks for coming on the show, guys. What did I nail that?
Nailed it. Yeah.
These guys
Okay.
are also the leads.
They're
Two of
also
the
the leads,
leads.
like a lot of heavy lifting here. And I want to get into all of that. The movie also has in Robbie Amell, who is just absolutely fantastic actor. He's an upload and just blowing up. So just the fact that you got him in the cast and then this incredibly hilarious movie, I'm just so excited to chat about it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, so I want to kind of hear about the origin story of the film and what brought you guys together. Was this initially meant for you guys to star in it? And kind of give me the whole rundown here.
Well, so we've been friends for a long, long time, and we were actually living together in our 20s when we started working together, and
Amazing.
we wrote a web series together, and we found that just as writers, we kind of had a shorthand, and we sort of all have similar taste, and we know what we know. It's just an easy process with the three of us tackling something. And so we did our first project together, and then this project came along because we just knew we wanted to do something in the sports movie genre. So so Evan came to Phil and I with the idea for something with race walking because he found a clip of it and it just looks hilarious. And basically we kind of just thought about it from like a narrative perspective, like what kind of movie do we want to see, basically. And we sort of like went back and looked at our old favorites, movies like Happy Gilmore and Cool Runnings and things like that. And we just kind of like workshopped it from there from a writing standpoint. We just kind of like built it out and just didn't overthink it really. We just kind of made sure we wrote in parts for Phil and I to play. And other than that, we just kind of like started working at it every day and being like, okay, but what do you want to have happen next? I'm like, is this working? Is that working? Like, and just kind of took it from there.
And Geoffrey, to answer the question about if Kevin and Phil were we were planning to cast them from the start. Yes, we definitely were planning to cast them from the start. That was kind of part of the parameters of our writing. You know, when we're taking on a project like this, it was like it's definitely a vehicle for these guys as well as on-screen talent because people just love their dynamic for obvious reasons.
We're talking about speed walking, right? Is it called race walking? Am I that out of touch now?
No, you're not out of touch. So it's called both.
Okay.
Technically, in the Olympics, it's actually called athletics. So the nomenclature around it is a bit all over the place. We connected a lot with the race walking community up here, and they all seem to refer to it as race walking. So that's what we went with.
What a ripe concept for the taking. I mean, I've never heard of it, right? Looked at this way, taken seriously, and then to put it in the sports comedy. It really does give it that kind of dodgeball feel, which
That's what
is
our producing partners really like. Collective Pictures, when we took the script to them, that was sort of their thing too. They looked at that as like a high concept. It's like, how has this not been done before?
yeah.
And yeah, and so like they were excited about that aspect of it too, I think. And then you go on like morning shows and there's just clips of like this new movie about race walking, and me and Robbie are like, oh my god, what are we doing? like, we're really doing it, man. We are really doing it.
So you wrote the thing. I mean, getting budget and all of that, scrounging that together, was that a pretty difficult process, or did you find this thing kind of snowball?
I mean, I think for independent film, it's always a difficult process. We had the benefit of up here in Toronto, we were able to kind of get our initial financing through Telefilm and Ontario Creates, and then our partners, Collective Pictures, were able to put together the rest of the financing. But it was quick. We had thought we would have about a year to prep the movie, and we ended up prepping it in what, like 4 or 5 months, a little bit less than that. Um,
Really? Wow.
so it was a pretty big feat for our Evan and our producing partners and everyone to really put everything together in that amount of time. So once we kind of got the initial go ahead, it was pretty we had to move pretty quickly from there.
Yeah. Well, how did you bring in Robbie Amell?
He's it's Robbie's production company, Collective
Really?
Pictures, that we brought it to. So he was a huge, he's a huge part of getting this movie made. Really championing it, and his him and his company and his partners, Jeff Chan and Chris Parry, they came on board and right away, and they identified the script as something that they wanted to do. And so from
Amazing.
the outset, like Robbie was like, you know, Robbie really believed in us, and Jeff really believed in us, and Chris really believed in us, and that's why they were like, you guys are going to be in it, and you're going to direct it, and we want you
Awesome.
to do what you did sort of on a previous project that we've done. And so it was sort of the, you know, the chance that they took on us and the faith that they put in us. You know, that's a huge
Well, yeah.
component of the story of of how this movie came to be, like massive, right?
Yeah, having a company like Collective and you know, having Robbie Amell as a producer and an actor, you know, that certainly helps accelerate the financing of an indie film. It would have been a much I don't know if it's possible without them. It truly probably isn't.
I mean, I feel like I'm sitting down and I'm listening to like Goodwill Hunting happen here, because
We like to think of ourselves as the race walking Goodwill Hunting. So
Yeah.
thank you for making
yeah,
that connection.
yeah, it
Exactly.
started here first on this podcast.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, you're right. You don't see that. I mean, before them, right, it was like Stallone and Rocky, and then everybody thought, oh, that'll never happen again. They made it happen, and it's so comforting to know in 2025, you guys can come together, having been writing partners and roommates and knowing each other and writing an incredible script with a great original concept, and that you can get it out there and say, like, you know what, we want to play these parts too. And they're so impressed by the script, they're so impressed by you, they're like, absolutely, let's do it. Produces it, comes on as part of the cast, and then you win at Slamdance. I mean, that is phenomenal.
True underdog sports story.
Right.
Yeah, for the movie and for us, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I
This
meant.
is life imitating art. Yeah.
Absolutely. So from here, are we looking at distribution as far as where are we going with it? Are we going theatrical? Are we going VOD? Walk me through it.
Yeah. I think we're hoping that, you know, that we're going to be able to get at least a limited theatrical run. We're just in the midst of kind of finding the right partners for this that we feel share our vision for what this can be and see the opportunity to kind of hopefully get this in front of as many people as possible. Because we do really feel like this movie is, you know, something that can appeal to a pretty wide audience.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
experience of watching it in theaters with other people is just so much fun. We, you know, during the screenings at Slamdance, people were cheering and clapping at all the right moments, and like,
Great.
it's awesome to have that vibe. And like, I don't know, I think comedies are so much fun to watch in theaters with people, and so I think that's hopefully going to be a big part of the path for getting this movie out there is figuring out ways to get people in seats at theaters watching it.
Phil, when you kind of discovered this concept, was there any hesitation with doing a sports comedy because they died off? I actually feel like you guys are on this upswing of bringing sports comedies back, which is why you're receiving this reception. Like, I can start seeing more sports comedies coming back. Everything was dark for a few years with thrillers and suspense. So I'm curious, did you feel like it was a big swing or a risk?
I don't think this sports element we felt was a big risk. I think that was honestly part of what was appealing. We grew up, like Kevin was saying, on the great sports comedies, and they're some of our favorite movies. And there hasn't been a lot, like you said, in the past little while, and so we knew it would be a challenge. I think doing any movie at independent budget level is going to be a challenge, let alone mixing in like sports action and that sort of stuff. We knew it would be a
Yeah,
little bit ambitious, but in terms of the appetite, I mean, when you're sitting around at the bar or hanging out with your friends, the movies you're quoting often are the Gilmores of the world and the dodgeballs of the world. And
absolutely.
it's, they hold such a special place for so many people that we hoped that if we could do it well, that it would be received with that intent.
So Kevin, you directed this. Phil, you directed this. You guys both are acting in it as well. I mean, how drained were you from this process? I mean, you're splitting yourself how many different ways, right?
Yeah, I think, you know, you're just so in it like that. There's not really a lot of time. You're basically wired for 3 weeks, right?
Okay.
And there's just not a lot of time to
9 weeks.
yeah, well, there's
Well,
See, he
yeah.
lost
yeah,
track of time. That's
Right,
how
yeah,
just
much
all
he
the
was
prep.
dialed in.
Yeah,
all the
exactly.
prep. But I mean, I think that helps, that fuels it too, though, right? Like you're doing all of these weeks of prep work. You're just
Okay.
so excited to get there and do it. Like you've been sort of working your, through the writing process, through attaching all your cast and doing the casting stuff, which is fun, and working with your production designer and working with your line producer and putting together, like you do all this stuff that you're just, every day is just leading towards this sort of the 19 shooting days that you're just, when you get into it, it's like, I think the excitement for me anyways, I don't want to speak for Phil, but I think the excitement of the challenge just like gave me the energy I needed just to get through all of those days
Wow.
consecutively. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
and you don't overthink it. You use the people around you who are very smart and very, like, Evan was on monitor every single second with us. We wouldn't have been able to make the movie without him. Matt Barkley, our DP, Connor Johnson, our AD, like these people are brilliant, and they really like allowed Phil and I to like be on our marks and do the work as actors, and we really relied on them and their taste to know if we got it. And like, so you surround yourself with good people, and then you just kind of go for it. And by the end of it, we definitely needed a rest. But I think like during the shoot, it was a really exciting time. I think that's what carried me more than anything.
That's amazing. What I love to ask this question is because my audience are filmmakers and screenwriters. So, do you guys have any advice for the burgeoning indie filmmaker, the screenwriter out there who is looking to get things done? You guys literally started from scratch.
I mean, I think
Kev's really digging deep there down there.
Yeah, I have some things. Yeah,
my advice would be, I think for the three of us, we've tried to be sort of like students of script writing for a long time. And the thing that's kind of helped us get the success so far that we've been able to have with a couple of projects in a row here is we're focusing on stories that we think that we know a lot about. Not that we knew a lot about race walking, but the film is ultimately about like a couple of friends and the growth of their friendship and all that kind of stuff. But we really kind of spent time and dedication to making sure the script was as tight as possible. And that can mean a lot of different things depending on the genre that you're working in, but making sure that the material that you're trying to take out there is the best version of what that movie needs to be. It's kind of like a vague thing to say, but we would not have gotten either kind of like the major projects that we've been able to do done
Yeah,
if the feedback anytime we handed someone the script was like, even people that don't want to make it with you are like, well, this might not be for us, but that's a really good script. So I think really focusing on making that script just as tight as you possibly can is
I love
my
that
advice.
that advice.
I would also sort of to piggyback on that a little bit. I would say I think it's important for people starting out to like make sure that you bite off only what you can chew, in the sense that like, if you're making movies at a certain scale and size, the first thing you do is try to set yourself up for success, right? So it's like maybe the first thing you do isn't the thing that's going to win Oscars as a drama or something. Maybe you want to, what's successful within it, like horror movies with your own sensibilities to it, comedy movies with your own sensibilities to it, bringing something to a genre where at an indie level you can have success. It's probably
Wow.
better to do something that you can, within the confines of what you have, that you can be successful at, than trying to like in your first film like make the statement of like everything you're interested in as a director. And it's like, well, you can down the road in your career, you can start to go into maybe the other things, but I would just say try to do one thing well. I think.
You're blowing my mind here, and I have to tell you why. I had on one of my favorite indie filmmakers, Travis Malloy. He did a movie called Pandorum. He did a movie called Infinity Chamber, and everything you said is like verbatim what
Mhm.
he told me. And so it's hitting so deep. Like, yeah, you don't go beyond your means. Do what you can do and do it well. It's awesome.
Yeah.
That's
No
so
one's gonna
cool.
give you no one's gonna give you credit. Honestly, it sucks, but like no one's gonna give you credit for trying something beyond your means and coming up short.
Yeah,
Like it's one of those things where like it's not gonna make a lot of noise, and it might not be successful sort of either in the festival
yeah.
circuit or wherever you're, I don't know. It's just it's one of those, like, I don't want to be like discouraging, but it's just, you also need to, I think, be smart when you're starting out.
I think that makes total sense. You don't want to go so big that you trip and fall flat on your face.
That's right. That's
But
not
if you
gonna
can do
help you.
something within your means and you do it really well, it's gonna pop. Yeah,
There's a
absolutely.
tendency. I think there's a tendency, when you're a young filmmaker, you're so excited about every aspect of film that you fell in love with, and you try to what Kevin's saying, you want to express how you feel about film in all of these different ways.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what Kevin's getting at, where you can get lost a little bit in that, and ultimately, it's an industry that it's art, but someone needs to pay for it, and it's hard
Yeah,
to
it's a
it's hard
business.
to
It's
a
show
business.
business for sure.
And it's hard to, you got to convince someone to, even at like a very low budget level, you got to convince someone to spend a lot of money on your vision. So, you're really better served really figuring out like what is the thing you want to say or showcase in, say, your first feature, rather than trying to bite off every little bit that you can get your hands on.
Yeah. Is there anything, Evan, that I should have asked you guys that I didn't?
Man, that's a tough question.
Well, I saved it for
I
you.
don't know.
Come on, Evan. We want a good answer here.
You're not on the spot or anything, man.
I think about maybe some about the integration of the race walking and the research behind the race walking. I think there was some really fun stuff for us in kind of exploring that world, and that's one of the most, I think, enjoyable parts of creating a project like this, is like getting to immerse yourself in that research and finding the little nuances of something and learning about this world that you really didn't know. And I think we kind of had an idea of what it might be when we started writing and started getting into it, and then discovered something, more interesting than we even thought, and met some really amazing people along the way. Like, we're very lucky to have some consultants on the project, like Stafford Whalen, who's an Olympic race walking coach who trained Kevin and
What? That's
Robbie
amazing.
on how to race walk. And then we had Evan Dunphy, who's a Canadian bronze medalist race walker, who's actually in the movie as a background race walker. He's going about 20% of his full speed, maybe less.
That's fantastic.
And he was there kind of on the day as a consultant to add little details. And there are things like, there's a lot, that they brought to the film to kind of enhance the authenticity and just help us understand the sport more, and give us even more of an appreciation and respect for the sport, which is something that, as we dug deeper, we were pretty amazed to find out, like, just how athletic these walkers are. Like, it's pretty wild how fast they go. Like, Evan Dunphy would come in the top 100 of the New York Marathon if you did it race walking. So it's like, there's some pretty phenomenal stats like that you're just like, what? How is this possible?
Yeah,
It's
that's
a
incredible.
it's a wild sport when you like really get into the detail, and you have to learn the detail. In fact, like on a like screenwriting level, like
Uh-huh.
when Evan, Phil, and I were like discovering, because we're trying to build out sort of what are the plot points in the story and what's happening literally on the track to create drama and all those kinds of things. And some of the things that we found, like some of the rules that apply, were like, we actually can't put this in because this is going to feel made up. This is going to feel like
That's
one of
so
those
funny.
like nobody's treating the audience like, they're just making up like obstacles. So we actually
Yeah.
had to like strip it down.
Really?
100%, man.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's some stuff in there, but like there's a penalty box, like
Yeah,
literally a penalty box.
just
And if you
standing.
get a penalty in race walking, you have to go and you have to stand in the box.
Yeah,
And it's like,
it's like it's like
like,
a taped off
dude,
area.
like if
Yeah. We're
I,
like, if we put this in here,
Yeah,
yeah,
because it'd just be like a
nobody would
guy with
believe
a
it.
paddle standing there waiting to like time how long your penalty is. But because we really
It's like
wanted to,
hockey.
yeah, exactly, and like, we really wanted to like, I think for people that see the movie, the people that are in the race walking community in real life, they fully appreciate and acknowledge how silly it looks as a sport, while being like a really difficult like athletic pursuit. And we really didn't want to like punch down towards the sport. We wanted to embrace
Yeah.
the silliness for for the tone of the movie and all that kind of stuff. But to Kevin's point, like certain things, if we put them in, we just didn't want it to seem like we were treating it like a joke, even though it's a real thing.
What about like lingo or like speed walking colloquialisms? Like, what was there like lingo that you had to work into the script
well,
that race walkers use?
to what Evan was saying, I mean, like you have somebody like that's where you use basically like Evan Dunphy as basically a consultant on the day, right? So like we get there on the day, and for instance, like they do this thing where like as they walk up to the line, they all start like tapping their thighs like, really quickly, right? And like those are just details of like he'd show up on the, and like this is what we would do in this situation, this is what we would do in that situation, and then we'd sort of pivot in the moment and be like, okay, well let's incorporate that, and so that's just the authenticity that like we're like, you know, we learned everything we could learn about the sport, and we were training for it, like even during some of like the rewriting process as we were getting ready to go to camera. But that stuff, like you're not going to get until you basically have like your consultants on the day. You're just not going to
Yeah.
get it because they got to see the situation and be in the situation that isn't as clear on the page and be like, oh, no, this is what we would do here. So like like lingo, like little physical details like that, like those are things that like you just can't really write. You just need someone who knows it.
I mean, this is why when people say like, "Oh, AI is taking over filmmaking and screenwriting," I'm like, I think it'll be an assistant, but it's not taking it over. It's not going to know little stuff like that that's embedded in a culture. You need real people with experience for that. So, all right. So the film is Race Walkers. I asked you my big question, so you guys already answered it. So thank you so much for being on the show. This was amazing.
Thanks for
Yeah,
having
thanks
me.
for
It's
having
great
us.
chatting with you.
Really a pleasure talking to you.